There's a part of my mind, my ego self, that is working purely on, you might say, the unenlightened ego level. It's worried about, it gets obsessed with safety, security, stability, predictability, takes offense, looks at other people as objects and not as subjects. That's the natural state of what I might call the ego self. It takes an act of will for a person to put themselves in the higher self and operate from that level. So for me, I have at least two different minds. I got my ego self mind and my higher self mind. And they're very different from each other. So when he says, the lev is more crooked than anything, he means your ego self. Crooked meaning, in our default state, you can't trust anything it says. It might be right, it might not be right. The ego self will lie to you willy-nilly just to get its way, just to make you feel safe and secure in the world. So our greatest danger is the lies that we tell ourselves. So when I say God is a God of truth, here's how I interpret that. God demands that we be truthful with him, which means we not believe the distortions, deceptions of the ego self, that we actually go into the higher self. And there are many, many levels of the higher self, but you've heard me teach about this. Again, I'm taking the Bible that says a God of truth demands the truth with us. I know my ego self is more deceitful than everything. I know it already. Jeremiah says it. And that God can see through it. So let's say I don't believe in God. Does this have meaning to me? Yes. Because there's something in me and something in each one of you that can see right through your lives. You've all been there. You've all been there when you're saying something to somebody to preserve your mask, preserve your persona, and you say to yourself, I don't believe one word that I'm saying. I'm just saying this to work this other person. I'm just saying this to make myself safe in the world. I know I'm lying. I know nothing in me is sincere right now. I'm just trying to protect myself. You've all been there. What light is that in you that while you're talking, a light goes on and says, you're lying. You know you don't mean it. Sometimes when couples are in great dispute with each other and a person says, I'm only continuing this argument to be right. I don't believe what I'm saying. I don't need to win this argument. I'm so addicted to being right, I will sacrifice my relationship. And you know yourself, I'm a false human being. There's a little light that goes on and says, you need to stop. But if your ego self is strong, it says, you shut up, I'm going to do it my way. And after all, that becomes hardened into a habit. That's not a person of truth. Meaning the truth of the situation, the truth that demands kindness, generosity, understanding what's deeply at stake, as the person of small truth that says, I happen to be right, but it actually makes no difference because I'm using being right as a cudgel to hurt another person. Now, you've all had moments of reflection. That's what I would call a God of truth. You don't have to believe in God to believe. There's a light in every human being that can see right through you and know when you're being a person of truth or not. Now, I happen to believe in God, so for me, that feels like a divine grace, a divine gift. Here I'll be in the middle of something, and a light goes on and says to me and says, you need to stop. You need to retrace, retrack, and become a person of truth right now. I can feel that light go on. So when I look here and I say, God says, I want you to have knowledge. I want you to be people of truth. For me, that's what I would call philosophic, meaning it's about all people at all times, everywhere. We all know what it means to be a false person and to be a true person. And we all know that our ego selves are crooked and fragile. And we all have the capacity to see through ourselves, or from a religious perspective, to see through ourselves with the help of God's light. So I just wanted to use these two brief examples to show you what I mean by the Bible as a philosophic text, because it's not talking about only about God and Israel, but talking in some way about all people everywhere in our inner experience of people being people of truth and being people of righteousness. So the seminar that I was at in Jerusalem was Hazoni. He made a similar point. I mean, he didn't say it like I'm saying it now, but I think his general point is absolutely right. We need to read the Bible however else we read the Bible. I'm not saying not read the Bible as a book of theology and God's presence, but for me, the most meaningful part of the Bible is to understand a Bible as a book of what I would call philosophic psychology or philosophic anthropology, something like that, where you can read through the book of Jeremiah and every chapter pull out sentences and study them as philosophic sentences that carry deep and utter truth about the human condition. And when you study them and when you read them, it tells you about yourself and every other human being.